Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video I'll be sharing with you a requested video of how to cut and sew a waist snatch corset with a deep V neckline. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button. Let's dive right into today's video. So first, here is my pattern paper, and I've gone ahead to mark out my basic measurements, just as my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waistline, and my top length, which is 5 inches away from my waistline. And I'm also going to use a bust dart for my pattern. So for my bust dart is 1.5 inches, which is the difference between my front and back measurements. So I'll go ahead and mark my shoulder divided by 2, come down by 1 inch, and I'll mark my shoulder slope. After I'm done marking that, I'll go ahead to find my chest line or my armhole, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, which will give me 7 inches. So I'll just go ahead and mark that at that point. Now I'll be marking the chest line area, and I'll just place my ruler and draw out a straight line. So after I'm done doing that, I'm going to divide my armhole into 2, and I'm going to fold my tape this way, mark the midpoint, and I'll come in by ½ inch. And from that point, I'll go down to the chest line and mark my bust circumference divided by 4, which is 8.3 inches. So I'll go ahead and connect my armhole this way. After I'm done doing that, I'll just use my marker to mark them out to make it more visible for you to see. So I'll just mark a basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches. After I'm done marking that, I'll just go ahead to use my marker to mark that out to make it more visible for you to see. So the next step I'm going to take right now is to go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5. So I'll just go ahead and mark from the chest line to the bust, under bust, waist, and top length, and I'll go ahead to draw a straight line at that point. So after I'm done doing that, I'll be marking my dart intake of 1 inch. So if you're a plus size or you're busty, you're going to be using 1.5 inches for this part. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark that to the end, connect, and draw a straight line. So while drawing out, I noticed that my line wasn't that straight, so I just went ahead to correct that. After I'm done outlining this, the next step I want to take is to connect from my under bust to my bust area, placing my curve root this way, and I'll repeat this at the other side of my pattern. And after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead to use my marker to outline this. So I'll go ahead to divide my shoulder into 2, and I'll connect from my shoulder down to the chest line this way. And after I'm done doing that, I'll be using 1.5 inches from my chest line. So you can use 2 inches. It totally depends on where you want your cup to start. So I'll be marking 1 inch as my dart intake at the upper part. So if you're on the plus size or you have a bigger bust, you're going to be using 1.5 inches or 2 inches on this point. It depends on how big your bust is. So I'll just go ahead to use my marker to mark that out, and after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to connect from the under bust to the bust area of my pattern. So when cutting this out, you just have to have in mind the design, the cup styling you want at that part. So I'll just connect it to my under bust, and I'll use my marker to mark that out. So after I'm done doing that, I'm going to connect from the upper part of my pattern to my under bust this way. So this is what I have at this point, and I'll use my marker to outline. At the other side of my pattern, I'll mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'll add ½ inch. This is to make sure that the cup accommodates my bust by the side, and I'll just go ahead to connect. After I'm done connecting, I'm just going to go ahead to use my marker to mark this out, and also connecting or marking out the rest of my pattern. Next, I'm going to be marking my body circumference. I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'll be marking this dart intake here. You don't want to have too much dart intake, and I'll add ½ inch. I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake I have there, and I'm just going to go ahead to replace it and add my sewing allowance back. So I'm using ½ inch for the sewing allowance. I'm going to mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace and add my sewing allowance. Mark my hip circumference divided by 4, measure these 2 inches dart intake, and I'll add my sewing allowance. So after that, I'll just go ahead to connect from the bust down to the top area of my pattern this way. So this is what I have after I'm done marking out. So after this, I'm just going to go ahead to work on the rest of my pattern. So I'll come down by ½ inch and I'll connect, also do this at this other part. So if you don't want to cut your pattern with a bust dart, this is how your corset pattern will be looking. So I'll be adding a bust dart to that later. So after this, I went ahead to mark out a style line because we are going to snatch our waistline. So I want to snatch out 4 inches from my waistline. What I'm going to do is that 4 inches, I'll be dividing it by 4, meaning I'm sharing that 4 inches on 4 parts of my corset. So I'll be marking ½ inch on both sides. So by the time I take ½ inch on the front right side of my pattern, I'll repeat it at the left side of my front pattern. I'll be having 1 inch snatched out from the front pattern. So after that, I marked 2 inches from my top length and I'll be connecting this to the lower part of my pattern this way. And this is it if you're just marking out a basic corset. So I'm going to mark my bust dart, and for me is 1.5 inches. And if you don't know how to do this, I have a video on my channel that will guide you on how to take your basic corset measurements and bustier pattern. So the difference between my front length and my back length is 1.5 inches because the front has a bust and at the back there is no bust. So because of this dart intake, my back length will be a bit shorter than my front length. So I'll go ahead and I will cut out my corset pattern and I'll be blending in my dart also. So after blending in my dart, I'll just go ahead to retrace my cup and also the 3-part corset effect I have there, and I'll cut out the rest of my pattern. So at this point, if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and if you have any question regarding this tutorial, please also leave it at the comment section. So I'll also go ahead and label my pattern so that I don't get confused, and I'll cut out the rest of my pattern this way. And also at the 3-part corset, you're just going to cut it out and blend in your darts, and also make sure that you cut out your yoke if you're going to work with your yoke. So for this pattern, I'm just working with the lower part of my pattern. So moving over to the back pattern, I'm going to mark my basic measurement, which is my shoulder to bust, which is 9 inches. Now because we took out a bust dart of 1.5 at our front length, my back waist is now 15.5 inches, and because of that same 1.5 inches that bust that we took, my back length is 22 in front minus 1.5, I'll be having 20.5. So I'll just go ahead to rule a line at those points, and I'll go ahead to mark out my basic measurement just like we did for the front pattern. So I'll go ahead and mark my shoulder divided by 2, come down by 1 inch, and I'll draw my shoulder slope. So from there, I'll mark my chest line, which is my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, and I'll just rule a line there. So I won't be working with my yoke for this pattern. We are just focusing on the deep neckline and the waist snatching of this pattern. So after that, I'll just go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches, and I'll just go ahead to connect and draw a straight line at that point. So after I'm done connecting this way, I'm just going to go ahead to mark 1.5 inch at both sides of my pattern at the back, and I also extend this to the upper part and extend it to the lower part. So for the lower part, you're going to extend it 4 inches after your waistline. So I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, add ½ inch for sewing allowance, mark my waist circumference, add my sewing allowance, measure the dart intake, replace, mark my hip circumference here and add my sewing allowance of ½ inch. So I'm just going to go ahead to connect my pattern all the way to the lower part. So after I'm done connecting this way, I'm just going to go ahead to mark this out so that it's going to be very visible for you to see. So after I'm done doing this, I'll be going up by 2 inches just like we did for our front pattern, and I will connect this to create the back lower part. And after this, I'm just going to go ahead, mark ½ inch after my chest line. This is to make sure that the lacing bar area does not pop up after lacing it, and I'll connect it back to my main pattern. So now I'll be marking my lacing bar area, and I'll be using 1.5 inches. So you can use 2 inches or more. It totally depends on the design you want to make at the back or the lacing bar area of your dress. And I'll just go ahead to draw a straight line, and I'll use my marker to mark that, indicate that I have a lacing bar at that area. So I'll be drawing a style line at this point, and I'll be snatching out ½ inch again from both sides. So snatching out ½ inch on both sides will have 1 inch. So repeating this at the other side of my back pattern, I have 1 inch. And remember that doing it for the front, you also have 1 inch at both sides, making it 2 inches plus this, you'll be having 4 inches. So the best way is whatever you want to take out from your waist, divide it into 4, just like you divide your basic measurement into 4, and mark that dart on one part of your pattern. This is like the easiest way to do this. So I have shared other methods also to snatch your waist on this pattern. You can just go ahead and check it out. So I'll just cut out the rest of my pattern, and with this we have come to the end of today's tutorial. Please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and join us in our sewing video. Thanks.